really.
Hi there, podcast fans. I'm Tom Gibbs. Welcome to Telegraph Audio Football Club. Today, it's the FA Cup third round, and everyone in the AFC first team is motivated and excited to discuss it. We cover Liverpool's incredible period of dominance and ask whether it will ever end. Tranmere's comeback at Watford, a 40-year-old hero in Old Wilbraham, and a conversation about whether anyone actually wants to win the FA Cup. Plus, it's time to assess the state of play in the Premier League, check in on any potential transfers, and a European roundup as the leagues return after a winter break. Let's take you now into the audio recording facility where I'm joined in 2020, as ever, by Mina Rizuki. How are you, Mina?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. No longer lonely.
Oh, great. That's
not because it's January or anything.
I took a moment to pass that. I thought you were just giving us an update on your life. But of course, I remember our last podcast was just you and I here. But
yes, it is about that. It's not about my personal life.
Good. All right, let's keep that separate. Let's keep that on Instagram stories. Joining us today, filling out our lineup, avoiding loneliness, we have JJ Ball. How are you, JJ?
Filling out. I'm always here.
You weren't last week.
Yeah, you haven't been here for a while, Jade.
That's right. I was in Aberdeenshire. It's lovely there. You should all go.
Good.
Yeah.
How cold is it?
Cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what makes it. Winter's the best season, as we all know. Anyway, completing the lineup. It's only Matt Law. What's going on, Matt?
I was available last week. You just didn't invite me.
That's not true, is it?
Yeah, perfectly true.
Oh, my goodness.
No email.
Joel Grove on the buttons.
Is that true?
It's true.
He looks...
I assumed you'd pre-recorded something. But obviously you're not that unprofessional.
Wow.
I think it's a sort of like a Mourinho style move to drop you to make sure you're motivated to get back in the next time.
Yeah. If this doesn't go well, I'm going to substitute at half time of the podcast. That's the most brilliant move of all.
Well, maybe we'll do a keen and bring you on for 20 minutes and then take you off.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm up for that.
Nice.
Sub me for the FA Cup bit.
We unfortunately have to discuss the FA Cup, Matt. Although I quite enjoyed the FA Cup this weekend. It
Why?
Wasn't,
Well, QPR, absolutely.
This is the thing. I mean, we have to start by talking about QPR, don't we? 11 goals in 2 games. How many of those 2 games have I been at? 0. I worked out. I've seen QPR score 8 goals in the games I've been to. I basically go to sort of 95% of the home league games. I've seen us score 8 goals since, I think, mid-September, and we've scored 11 in 2 games, and I've seen none of them. Brilliant. Well done. That's all for QPR. Let's move on to the Merseyside Derby, which I suspect is higher up most people's interest levels this week. Very inexperienced Liverpool side, Mina, but they got it done against Everton. This feels to me like the epitome of a good moment, as managers are so fond of saying, for a club. I'm struggling to remember a period where a Premier League team has just had this level of dominance. I mean, I know they only snuck past Everton, but there just is such an inevitability about them at the moment, and they can put out a team of kids, basically, and still look so exciting and still win against their local rivals. Were you impressed with their young players in this game?
Yeah, I think that what's the most impressive is the fact that the big kids and the young kids can do it all the time. And I think, if anything, it shows you, yes, Liverpool's a great club and all of this, but it's really Klopp, right? It's the fact that he's got a strategy, he's got a set of tactics that are always so well executed, and he manages to talk to the players in the sense that they know exactly what they're doing. It's easy, and it's everything that they do is facilitated on the pitch, and they're allowed to express their true potential because of the fact that he's got a philosophy that is simple to follow, that it can be translated from the likes of Sane and Firmino to obviously Ryan Brewster and co. So it's more about what the coach has done for this team, how he's, by the way, so good at creating fullbacks as well. I mean, it's almost like the fullbacks are always perfect under him. They were perfect at Borussia Dortmund. They're perfect at Liverpool. Even the kids yesterday were perfect in what they were doing. I thought it was an exceptional performance from the guy that was brought on to replace Milner and LaRouche and Nico Williams. And honestly, I think this is credit to Klopp more than anything else.
The fact that there are this new crop of players coming through, Matt, and he seems to be giving them a little bit more game time this year and using them for some of the other competitions, does that show you that Klopp is building something for the medium to long-term future at Liverpool? Is that him, or will that be someone else at the club who's trying to make that plan for the future?
Good question. It must be sort of joined up thinking throughout the club, I'd imagine. It can't just be him, because he's got to be relying on other people to get them to a certain stage. I mean, I didn't see the game yesterday because I was on my way back from Chelsea, but I saw them on telly against Villa in the quarterfinals when they played a really young side. The average age was like 15 or something. And some of them were unbelievable. Harvey Elliott looks fantastic player. A lot of them actually have been bought in. They're not sort of fully homegrown. A lot of them have been bought in at kind of 15, 16. I think even Ryan Brewster was.
Yeah.
Not the man who got the goal though.
No, but they're recruiting well at a certain level, and he's giving them chances. I didn't see the game. I've got to be honest at all. I didn't even bother watching the highlights. But what is probably the only interesting thing going forward?
Substitution.
the only interesting thing going forward is what Ancelotti takes from it, because I'd imagine Ancelotti's been looking to see which players he can start to shed. Particularly with Everton's record losses coming, which is exclusively revealed in the Daily Telegraph today. And I'd imagine quite a few of those players who played yesterday now will have made up his mind a little bit.
What did you make of Everton's performance, JJ? They seem to be getting pretty negative press on Monday, but I didn't mind watching them. I thought they at least gave it a little bit more of a go than they had done in the past, but I suppose you can't really defend the fact that that's basically their first team and they've lost to Liverpool's reserves.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we don't know quite what Ancelotti wants to do with him yet. He's still figuring out the team, like Matt's saying, and you'll have learned quite a bit about this. The only player that came away with any praise was Sidibe, the right back, who I think is a really great player, but he was good at Monaco before. The chances they created are, a lot of them are kind of crosses in the box, set pieces. I think Sigurdsson's not been good most of this season. He's creating chances, but they're mostly from like balls in the box. They're playing, I mean, Ancelotti's approaching this. He's got to play against Anfield, against the best team in the world. That's actually their title now.
They got the little gold patch on their shirt to prove it.
But I mean, this Liverpool team, even though they've put all these young players in, I don't remember ever seeing a team where I'm like, they're unbeatable. It's like unprecedented. And you think the record in the Premier League, what they've lost, something like, was it? They won 28 and 29 or 29 and 30, something mental. It's you think of managers that get fired because they lose a couple of games, but then Liverpool now, like what I'm trying to say is like Liverpool's record, the way they continue winning and are so invincible looking, makes it seem more unrealistic that anyone can survive the manager job.
Chris Wilder said this the other day, didn't he, after Sheffield United lost to them? He basically said there's not a single thing you can do better than them. Like, you can't outpass them, you can't outrun them, you can't outwork them, you can't outmuscle them. He was arguing that most great teams, there's something you can, even if it's, going down to very, very sort of basic tactics, there's something you might be able to do better than them. But his argument was, with this Liverpool team, you literally cannot do anything better than them when you play them. It's
created this sort of feeling where they have that same, when they come into games, you think you're going to lose to them, like Manchester United used to have under Sir Alex Ferguson, that sort of feeling. And so when you put young kids in, the crowd behind it still must have this thing where you've come to our house, you're not going to come away with anything from here. And they slotted in well. But I mean, the players they've brought in, they're all half decent. They've all been highly rated for a long time, all those youngsters.
It's ironic as well, it just sums up how good the whole setup there as well, past Klopp, that it's ironic that they are the team that least needs a new signing at the moment, and yet they're the first team to sign someone in the transfer window because they're most ready to, whereas everyone else is kind of just reacting, whereas they've been ready to, and they don't actually need a signing, which really sums up how well things are run at the moment at Liverpool.
And Everton definitely need signings, but needed that for a long time, regardless of who came in. Ancelotti's there now. He'll want to bring in a bunch of players, but you can't buy too many because it disrupts any semblance of cohesion you had before. The players they've got are really average. They are exactly where they should be. Like I've said this a lot of times, and Ancelotti is one of the best managers of all time, and he'll have exactly the same problems the managers before him had. They'll need to make changes, like that record loss that they've got now. They're just spending money on players that aren't taking them to the next level, whereas Liverpool have recruited so smartly, bringing through younger players now who will be useful for the first team in a short while. But Everton need first team signings now. And Ancelotti, I think I've read him saying that he doesn't normally talk to players after games properly, doesn't do a proper debrief, but in his post-match he said that he will definitely be talking to them this time.
I just want to do like a devil's advocate just because, firstly, I think that it's in terms of signings, it's much easier to bring in a squad player and somebody who's out there who's a bargain that you've already played against and you've watched with your own eyes than it is for somebody like Everton or perhaps West Ham to bring in players that will really be the transformers that make a difference on your team. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a lot harder for certain teams right now to get the players that they can really push the team on. When it came to that actual game, I do think a lot of the time there is that whole psychological effect. When you believe that you're the best team in the world, it just spreads to everything. It's kind of the reason why Madrid won 3 years in a row the Champions League, even though they're a bit rubbish at certain times and during those 3 years. But I also think that it would be fair to say that Everton should have been 3-0 up at half-time. They had exceptional chances. Their inability to finish them is perhaps, the reason why Ancelotti needs to go out there and get someone. But it is a lot of missed chances. But you have to be good to get your luck, and Liverpool are good enough. But it's interesting also when you look at, for example, even in the Champions League, Gazzetta dello Sport wrote at the time that Barcelona's kids are better than their first team. Because kids sometimes, when they are allowed to play a game, and especially if it's a grudge match or if it's Everton or it's against another big team, you want to show yourself off because this is a side that you're probably not going to break in that easily. And if you are a side that is filled with players dying to make a difference, this is your bread and butter. You will go out there and you will give everything you have. And we've seen that from Chelsea this whole season.
Like the signings, it's one of those virtuous circle things, isn't it? Where if you're privileged to be playing extremely well, there's far less pressure on you to come in and do well as one of the younger players. Let's talk about the FA Cup in general. You said last week, Mina, your New Year's resolution was to watch more Championship football. Which Championship teams impressed you this weekend?
Honestly, probably just QPR.
Of course, Mina. That's the answer we were looking for.
Middlesbrough were not bad, but I don't know whether that has more to do with the opponent than anything else. But
yeah, they'll need a replay. Spurs and Middlesbrough, Man United and Wolves will do too. Strikes me as probably the last thing any of those clubs will want at the moment, apart from Middlesbrough, possibly, Matt.
I wouldn't have thought Middlesbrough do because they've started making a bit of a run in the Championship, and they'll still be thinking about the playoffs, even though that seemed unlikely a little while ago. I was at Chelsea where Forest, who I think are fourth in the Championship, won 3 games on the trot, made 10 changes. They made more changes than Chelsea. And before the game, the manager had said, we've got no chance. And after the game, the manager said, we're not going to win the cup, so there was no point staying in it. And it was just like, what have we all been doing for the last 2 hours then? What's the point?
You're quite fed up with the FA Cup, aren't you, Matt?
I'm just fed up with what it's become, just fed up with trying to pretend that it's something it's not. There's no point pretending anymore. Unless they're going to have a massive rethink on it, then we may as well just accept that it's very much a sort of third. I actually prefer the League Cup to the FA Cup these days as well. Because the League Cup falls earlier, I think it means it's generally more exciting, whereas this third round now, in amongst all the Christmas football, when the managers will then rest like 10, 11 players, has just become so dull. I like the FA Cup once it gets going a bit. Third round's just become a non-event now.
It's true. It's on average 7 changes per Premier League side. So.
No, I doubt whether that's just Premier League either.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, all the Championship teams rest. I mean, I wouldn't have minded Chelsea. The Chelsea team they put out yesterday was, fine. There was stuff to watch in it. And if Forest had have come with a half-near first-choice team, it'd have actually probably been a really interesting match. But it's just a complete non-event. And that was the case in probably 85 to 90% of the ties.
Nice novelty kit for Chelsea, though.
Yeah, it was a nice kit, that was, yeah.
Go back to yesteryear.
Yeah, that's the solution. What about one of the less non-eventy games, JJ? Tranmere Rovers came roaring back against Watford. Nigel Pearson said the competition was not a priority for Watford. And so it proved when they went 3-0 up and then let 3 goals in. Is this where the Pearson fun stops for Watford, do you think?
Nah, these games just happen now and again. They put out a weak inside, so that's always susceptible to something going wrong. This game is an exact example of why VAR is really, really good, because the referee made 2 really bad calls, both overturned, to give Tranmere the way back into the game. And if you hadn't had that, for Tranmere to have pulled that off, you need everything to go your way. And it's not just that they needed an advantage, is that they needed the fairness of those decisions going their way. I've seen it so many times in my time supporting Aberdeen where the big club gets the decision, and that's just seems to have happened there. But the penalty decision for the equaliser the referee blew it. When I watched it, it was like, well, that's obviously a penalty. And it was good. And what was the first VAR that they overturned was an offside call, I think it was.
I think that's right, yes.
Yeah, I think it was that. Anyway, it was great. But Watford won't care. And again, because they are starting to get a bit of a run in the Premier League and there's so much money involved that they maybe won't care. And they saw what happened when they got to the final last year and they got absolutely gubbed. It doesn't really
They'll
matter.
care about a replay.
Well,
They won't want to, even though they're playing a weakened side, I think the one thing they probably didn't want is a replay.
the thing is, it all helps because it helps you build momentum if you win these games. And I know I think I share a lot of your opinions on the FA Cup, Matt, but I don't see why, like, if you're all these people coming to watch you every single week, and well, they are customers now, basically, rather than fans, I'd say, but you still think it's more fun going on a cup run and getting something out of it. Because it's more likely that you can achieve something rather than just, we've survived another season. Look forward to next year where we survive another season.
I agree that with the mid-table clubs or clubs that haven't got massive injury lists or something. But then some of them
loads of them went out there, didn't they? Like Palace and Brighton particularly.
Like Newcastle played a full team.
Yeah, Newcastle love to mug off the cup,
yeah.
don't they? Like they're always
traditionally, although Bruce seems a bit more invested in it, doesn't he?
But he's like done exactly what I've just said is that you have a go at it because then that can not only help your Premier League season because you get a bit of momentum, a bit of buzz about it, but it's also you're in there to win things and that's a way you could win something.
But they drew and the fans all chanted at Joe Linton, "You're not fit to wear the shirt."
Oh, I like Joe Linton. He's
not a lot of momentum there.
He is really Joe Linton. What has happened to him though? I just feel like there is so many opportunities for you to get these goals and you're missing really. This was a very strange game. 83 possession at one point, 75 overall in the first half, and Newcastle were just anyway.
They reckoned without 40-year-old man Aaron Wilbraham, didn't they?
And yeah, and it just goes to show you, by the way, I love that because it was just such a nice mix of young and old, which is exactly what you need for a team to be somewhat, interesting to watch.
Sure.
Bruce has changed his set up to a 3 in midfield, and I don't think he's. I'm just pulling this stat out. I'm probably wrong, so I should really check it. But They definitely haven't done very well since doing it. I think they might not have won a game, or they've only won one since doing it. Because before they were playing with their 2, and it's interesting that that's what's happened. But it's to get like the Longstaffs in, and Shelby's been playing well before as well. Joelinton, I think, is a problem of confidence. Surely,
maybe,
it's been said that he's not enjoying himself where he lives, going from Germany to where he lives in Germany, and before that Brazil to the sunny climes of Newcastle.
It's a great city.
Yeah.
It's just chilly.
So it's
Great
like the
fun.
Di Maria problem, basically.
Well, it could be he just can't settle, and that might just be that maybe he needs to be somewhere like London, something like that. Just a different kind of city, a different kind of lifestyle, and that just happens with some players. And it could be that it's going to take him too long to get into it. And if the fans turn on you, then how much confidence are you going to have? And then as soon as your confidence goes, you start snatching at chances. Like there's a left foot volley he took, which he didn't hit properly the way I think he should have done, and then there's a header that was going on target, may well have gone in, but took a deflection off a defender. All these little things just aren't going his way. But I think
it is I do agree that I think it's a confidence thing.
What about John Stones? Got his revenge for Manchester City over Tom Pope and Port Vale.
Well, he didn't. Tom Pope scored.
Well, I think the
4-1
victory.
Yeah, but even
probably...
so, I think that Tom Pope wins that.
Yeah, I'd be annoyed as well.
That's a Tom Pope victory in my book.
Well, it was a mixed weekend for Tom Pope. He made the joke initially about scoring 40 goals if he played against John Stones every week, and then said afterwards, it'd actually be 50. And then he had what was known as a milkshake duck moment, where he is now being investigated for anti-Semitic tweets. Even the cult heroes are now disgracing themselves moments after we actually learn their names and they become famous. This is a sure sign the FA Cup has lost its magic, surely. But what about City? I mean, they strike me as a team that will be particularly interested in this trophy.
Really?
Why?
Well, they're not going to win the league. Do they not need to end the year on a high? Or do you think
no one cares about domestic brilliance anymore when it comes to
this
them.
This is a flat episode.
I think
isn't
it does. At the
no
end
one
of the
likes
season,
the FA Cup.
At the end of the season, especially Pep Guardiola would be looking at how do you assess your record, what you've done. It is with titles and winning the FA Cup, even if it's not doesn't seem important at this stage. When it gets to that final, it is. I mean, it's nowhere near what Champions League is or winning the league, but it's still a title. And you can say, well, I won this.
No, I think that's true. I think if Pep Guardiola finishes the season you're able to say trophyless, that's a bad word to associate with Man City and Pep Guardiola.
I think that, honestly speaking, that all he cares about is the Champions League. If you're showing progression, if you're showing to be if you're growing your team on a European level where you actually are leaving behind a side that can really battle, and not just in like the second round, but in quarterfinals and semi-finals, if he manages to reach the semi-finals, no one's really going to care about the FA Cup, because really what everyone is judging City on is that competition. And I think everything else for me
I agree with that,
huge.
but it's still a justification, isn't it? Still at the end of the season when, look, it's going to happen. Lots of people are going to talk about Liverpool running away with it. City weren't good enough, blah, blah, blah. If City have actually won the League Cup and the FA Cup, he might not really believe it, but he can use it as a justification to say, well, hang on, we weren't that bad. We won 2 of the 3 domestic.
I also think he's genuinely desperate to win. It's part of what makes him what he is. And I mean, he's said recently in one of his interviews that he's always been always lost or been losing since his first season at Barca when he won a sextet. Like, you can't really get better than winning every single trophy. And so to win the FA Cup again would be an achievement. He takes the League Cup seriously. I mean, he does rotate, but he still leaves big guys in there and makes sure
he
they
takes
get over the line.
seriously.
And he's won the Charity Shield, Community Shield every single time. That's right, isn't it?
I think so.
Sure, yeah.
Arteta, I was at the Arteta Arsenal press conference last Thursday, and we were talking to him about trying to create a culture at Arsenal, and he used the words that City were addicted to winning, and that he's got to build that addiction at Arsenal. So that probably feeds in with what Joel's talking about. Not Joel, JJ. Joel's behind the glass. Too many J's.
He may never speak.
Hello, I'm Marianne Jones, and I'm the editor of the Telegraph magazine, which means I spend my week overseeing every page, from the front cover to hard-hitting news reports, columns and lifestyle features. We go to print weekly, so we have a little bit longer to craft our journalism, using our award-winning writers and fantastic art and photography teams. That means we can publish long-form pieces that really get to the heart of the story. Just recently, our cover interviews with Joaquin Phoenix and James Middleton made global headlines, while our writer Mick Brown's investigation into false memory syndrome won a major press award. And the fact of the matter is, we couldn't have done all of this without our subscribers. Without them, we just can't commission the stories you like reading or make podcasts like this one. Why not try out a 30-day subscription to The Telegraph completely free? Go to thetelegraph.co.uk/audio.
Let's leave the FA Cup behind us now and talk about the general state of play in the Premier League. Who impressed you most over the festive period, Matt? We didn't get your thoughts last week because you were snubbed.
Probably Watford, which was, because I snubbed. Yeah, no one cared about my thoughts. Why'd you care about my thoughts now? I'm not going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to withhold them.
Honestly, I agree with him, Tom.
Probably Watford. I mean, Watford, they've come back from the dead in the Premier League. I thought they were finished, and unfortunately one of those results were against my team. But, they've had a brilliant, brilliant Christmas period. Southampton too. And Danny Ings, I mean, incredible. Going back to when I saw them lose 9-0, I just thought that was a club that just looked like it couldn't turn itself around, and now they look like a mid-table team at the moment. So those two win Christmas for me.
Yes. What about Arteta, JJ? Arsenal very good against Manchester United. What have been your thoughts about him so far?
I really, really, really want to know how he's been able to put these changes in that he's put in with no training time. So over the festive period, after a game, you have to have a recovery day. And then the day after that, you can't really train with any intensity to get anything going because you can't make the players work that hard because they're going to get injuries, stuff like that.
Did you see David Luiz after the match against Manchester United?
I did, yeah.
He seems a fair bit happier, it's fair to say, I think, under Arteta than he was under Emery. That must help.
It must help. I mean, the coaching staff has changed, right? So everything on the training ground has changed. It could be that things have just run their course with Emery. It certainly seems to have done. And what Arteta is doing is clear. It seems to have been communicated really well. Whereas you couldn't really see what Emery was doing. I think that's because that's mainly his style. He always adapts to whatever is happening. Whereas Arteta is putting in his own stamp on it, it's a 4-2-3-1, which defends as a 4-4-2, and it attacks with the attacking shape's like a 2-3-5. So you've always got three midfielders blocking things because Maitland-Niles tucks inside because that's the fullback who's available just now. I think this will change when more players are back from injury. Like because you've got Saka playing at left back at the moment, because then he becomes the auxiliary winger on the left. But when you've got Tierney back, that'll be sort of similar. And you've got Bellerin back in the right back. He might not go inside midfield like Maitland-Niles does, but it suits it. So he's made changes with the players he has available, but it works really well. And there's really clear pressing triggers. They're organised. The shape is obvious wherever they are going. And to do that with no training days.
You see, I think that's because I think that his changes are more pragmatic than they are like a whole like new like implementing a style, because it's just like playing your best players and your players in their right positions.
Yeah, getting them in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Getting Lucas Torreira back in, which I don't know why was ever like. I feel like this guy should always play.
His numbers are like Kante.
I know,
and I don't know why he's not getting a game before. I agree with you again.
Why
are we agreeing so much?
Somebody who cares a lot. He's so passionate. You know. Yeah. What is going on?
I don't know.
It's a new year.
Gone all wrong.
And maybe and you find like David Luiz, if everyone's having fun, he just like breaks into it because it's like and all of a sudden he becomes this guy that's like the leading light of the club when he feels like
he's like the anti, like his personality has to be anti everyone else.
Yes,
everyone's
exactly.
down, he's got to be like, I'm a joke, and now he's good. Yeah.
But this is why I feel like it's fun now for them. And so if it's fun, they're more determined to listen to what's being said. They're more determined to listen to the various tactics they have to do. But you're right, it is a lot more commitment being shown. They almost look like Sheffield United.
But literally, how much time would you have had in the training ground to work on them? You can do shaping where you walked a team through the shape they're meant to be in different parts of the pitch. It's quite boring and slow, and you have to walk them, and you can do it at different intensities and stuff. But he would mostly, I would think, would have been talking to players 1v1 while organising everything else with the club he's been doing, or doing video analysis. And so if he's doing these little short bits, I don't know how many days he's had, maybe 5 full days or something like that of training, the difference between what they are now and what they were is astonishing.
What did you make of him when you went to see him, Matt?
Yeah, he's good. He's a good talker. He always has been. I mean, I covered him a lot as a player. He's not kind of bombastic in a Klopp way, or even really a Guardiola way. He's kind of a bit more reserved than those two, but he is a good communicator. He wants to put across a message. He likes to talk. It's not like a case of he's trying to get in and out. And yeah, he wants to build that connection with the fans. I mean, I'd be a bit more reticent to start going crazy about him yet. I mean, they've won 1 game with him.
Mm-hmm. And it could go wrong really quickly.
It could go wrong. We saw that, we were all going mad about Man United under Solskjaer to start with, so I'm a little bit more reticent to
I don't think anyone
there.
cares though about. I know this sounds crazy. I mean, I'm somebody who's very driven by results, but if you're seeing a side actually develop your, Chelsea, you're willing to stick around.
They have to an extent. I mean, I'm not.
I mean, organisation. Look, it's like for me, it's miles apart to what they were producing before that. They look like they had no idea what they were doing.
Chelsea, was it? I don't know.
It'll take time, but also the thing
it
is
will take
that
time.
Arteta will find, and already will know, that people will. I mean, scouts, analysts will have looked at Arsenal's past games, worked out what they're doing, and go, okay, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do this to counter that. And then he has to adapt. It's the same thing that Guardiola's had to do for so long.
Yeah, I mean, he might finish 8th, he might finish whatever, but I feel like if you can see something you can identify, like an actual progression, a side that is playing in a certain way that you know, or you can predict a little bit more easily than you did with Unai Emery, where you're like, what's going on here? Then I think you're willing to give him the time it takes to buy the place. Because let's be honest, he's not going to get what he wants in the transfer market.
Let's talk about the transfer window. Chelsea, of course, available again to do some business. Do you think they will, Matt?
Yes.
Who are they after?
Oh, you do?
Well, they're desperate for a striker, stroke forward, and it's proven really, really difficult. I think so many clubs at different levels in the Premier League want a striker in January, and it's really, really tough to get one. And ironically, most clubs who aren't Chelsea want Chelsea's 2 backup strikers, and Chelsea don't want them and want to find someone else's striker.
Is there a chance that if they did get rid of Giroud, say that would precipitate a merry-go-round?
See, I think Giroud will probably go no matter what. I just think they're waiting probably till the last week of January to make sure they don't get injuries, but I think Giroud will go whatever. Batshuayi is more reliant on someone coming in. And then, other than the striker, I do think that Nathan Ake is a good shout. They want someone who can cover a few different positions, and he would fulfill a lot of what they're after and is easy for them to sign, which is why they don't have to rush to do that. But yeah, they will try. I mean, I think that a lot of clubs are trying. Man United want to get a couple in. Man City keep telling us they don't want to, but I know for sure they're looking at defenders. And then down the bottom, everyone wants players. So I think it'll be busy, but I think as is always every single transfer window, most of it will be the last week of the window.
Man United certainly seem to have a need for a striker, Mina. They didn't register a single shot on target in their game against Wolves. Give us a few names. Have you got anyone in mind from across the continent who you might think could solve a problem for Manchester United?
No, because I honestly don't think it's a striker problem.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
What's going on, JJ?
I don't know.
5 points, Mina, you're right.
It's a midfield problem. So if they can enhance the midfield, if they can better it, they can manage to get more control, then they can provide to what they do have, because they do have very talented forwards. Even Mason Greenwood, the kids, everyone there, I do think is much better going forward than what they have in the middle, and I think that's their main problem. You can see how much Pogba, even if he plays a cameo role, just can change the whole setup of the game and how much he can influence it and direct the forwards. And so if imagine you have two of those and or at least on a consistent basis without the injuries, then this would be a flying club in my opinion.
It's predictable coming from me, but there are players in Scotland who loads of Premier League teams should be looking at. Alfredo Morelos at Rangers is a really, really top player. I think could play for teams in the top 4 in England. The Colombian guy just scores for fun, quite aggressive, quite Tevez-like.
Gets sent off all the time, doesn't he?
Did, not this season. He got sent off against Celtic because he did a get it right up you gesture in the Old Firm derby, which is not advisable. But there's another guy is quite Celtic.
How much would Morelos cost?
Rangers say they won't sell him at any price. But I think
could recommend it.
Well, definitely not in January, but you'd think he'd be. He's worth about 20-25. So if you look at Moussa Dembele, who went from Celtic to Lyon, I think they sold him for about 20. I might be getting that wrong. He's now being quoted something nuts like 30-40 million to go somewhere else. But Odsonne Edouard is at Celtic, and he's a really classy striker who could also be pulled away with a bit of money, but he'd be another one that's about 25-30. But these are some of the only players that are playing in a quite decent league who could perform straight away in England, because it's not too dissimilar. But who's the there's a guy at Salzburg, Hwang Hee-chan, is a striker who's really impressed with him against Liverpool, well, in other games as well. But yeah, there's some value to be found across Europe, but go to Scotland. Sam Cosgrove at Aberdeen, he scored 100 goals. Get him.
Don't get rid of your
I was going to say, why are you selling your
You
players?
should get loads of money for him.
But then you're not replacing with as good a player.
That's true. I haven't thought this through. Take this out in the edit.
It's a quandary. Let's hear some music. Yes, it's a song for Europe, Mina. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is back in our lives in European football, back at Milan. Can he still thrive in Serie A, and why do they want him?
Maybe he should go to Chelsea. He should have gone to Chelsea.
That would have been fun.
That would have been fun. The young squad with the old man up front. Listen, I think that what Milan has been criticised for this season is that they have a very young squad. And it's a very unstable management in the sense that, it's new ownership, obviously. Everyone's changed from Leonardo, the sporting director, to now there's Maldini and Boban, and everything keeps changing and stability going, and Gattuso went, and then they had another manager and this and another one. And what they want is somebody who can give them a few more assurances, because right now their game has improved under Stefano Pioli, their new coach. You can see them actually have more of an identity. They're creating chances. The only problem is that they have Piontek up front who's not taking them. And
what's happened with him? He was incredible when he first joined them.
I think that firstly, he started off the season with a few problems injury-wise. And then after that, his confidence was just robbed because they had a bad manager. I know everyone loves him and said, I was never a fan of his, Marco Giampaolo. He eventually got sacked. Under Pioli, you can see Piontek getting his confidence back, but the team is not creative enough to work out exactly what it is he needed. It was much better when they had the likes of Bakayoko, when he could rely a lot more on certain movements. And I think with what they feel with Zlatan is that you get more of a guarantee and a few goals, because right now Milan is struggling to score those goals.
What about in Spain? Is this the most exciting title race in Europe? Barcelona held by Espanyol in the...
Oh, it's a bad performance.
Yeah.
This was a bad performance. De Jong got his first career red card. You can see he's a little bit distraught by that. is this the most exciting title race? No. I think a title race is only ever exciting if the two teams are very good, rather than the fact that no one really wants it. Does that make sense? It's a little bit like last year was so exciting because City and Liverpool were so good, whereas it wasn't exciting to see who's going to make top four.
Oh, you think? I think I'm completely the opposite. I found City Liverpool tedious because they just kept winning. I want
Yeah,
fallible
I agree
teams
with that.
and.
Okay, but imagine they're just less
with Mina
good.
again.
Imagine they're just less good, rather than the race for fourth where no one wanted it, and you're just like, oh come on, one of you win a game, please. I'm not saying that's what it is with Madrid and Barcelona, but you do feel like, yeah, maybe it's exciting in the sense that you never know which one's going to have a really bad day, and it happens a lot more frequently than you'd imagine. I know this sounds really biased, but I do think it's Italy right now that's the most exciting, because Antonio Conte, just with his drama alone, makes everything so interesting. And Lazio are just a stunning team to watch, so offensive. And if you want to talk about midfielders and creativities, and if you want to look somewhere, Luis Alberto is nothing short of fantastic. Milinkovic, Savic, Lucas Leiva. This is just a beautiful midfield, a beautiful forward line, defensive balance all round. And of course, you have Juve too.
Yep, good old Juve. What about in Germany? Schalke's Nubel has agreed to join Bayern Munich in the summer. Is there any way to stop the Bundesliga effectively being a feeder club for Bayern Munich? Or is that just what we're doomed to watch for eternity in Germany?
Yeah, pretty much doomed. It's just, this is what it is in certain leagues. And you grow up and you sort of have that one club that you always dream of playing for. Schalke had given Nubel the captaincy in August and have now stripped him of it. Because he's going
Too right.
for free to Bayern, effectively. And that's been really disappointing for them, to be honest. And David Wagner's the man in charge at Schalke. But Bayern, who always, talk badly about other clubs getting and spending money, well, they're not cannibalizing their leagues all the time. So.
Wagner's doing well, isn't he?
I mean, to be honest, I just feel like, yeah. But again, with the Bundesliga, it's a lot of teams not living up to expectations more than it is teams being fantastic. When Mönchengladbach were at the top, they were like sixth best at everything, and yet they were at the top of the table, And then you sort of sixth best defense, sixth best attack, sixth best, interceptions, that kind of thing. And eventually, I mean, Nagelsmann's doing a very good job at Leipzig, so that's fun to watch as well. But I think that a good Borussia Dortmund, which is what we should expect, and a really great Bayern Munich would have made this a completely different league.
Sell Germany, buy Italy. Let's finish up by asking you all the question we asked our friends on social media, which was after Milkshake Duck Tom Pope declared he could score 50 goals past John Stones in a season. Which player below the Premier League do you wish had the chance to play in the top flight? We had 3 shouts for this for Adebayo Akinfenwa. There's still time for him. And another suggestion was Jesse Lingard, which just feels a little bit mean. Who have you got, JJ?
I love if Graham Shinney came up to the Premier League. He plays at Derby just now. He's injured. He was the Aberdeen captain for a while. He's magic. He's great.
He's the brother of the other Aberdeen Shinney, right?
He's the brother of Andrew Shinney.
Where's Andrew Shinney? I saw him over the weekend. Does he play for Derby as well?
You saw him over the weekend?
I saw him on Wikipedia over the weekend. I
right.
was idly Googling it and thinking...
You weren't socialising with him?
No, no.
He was at Birmingham for a while, but he's at Luton now.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great times my weekend, Googling Aberdeen players. What about you, Mina?
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
All the Derby players.
It is. Derby's really getting... come on, let's be honest. It's Wayne Rooney.
Come on, Matt, you must have a good one.
Do you remember Lee Trundle?
Yeah.
I remember thinking
Cult hero.
I was sort of young enough when he was at his peak for Swansea to just think that all the replayed amazing goals I scored would mean he would inevitably be like the next Matt Letizia in the Premier League. And he never got the chance. And he's still... I saw a Twitter clip of him the other day playing for someone, and he's still lobbing them in for like 30, 40 yards. So, yeah. Lee Trundle.
Yeah, sounds like you spent a lot of your youth watching Soccer AM, Matt.
At a certain point, there were probably a good few years of hungover Soccer AM watching it.
I take it your answer is just QPR, Tom.
Well, of course, I don't want to get rid of them, but look, you saw a Barry Eze when we went to QPR.
Eze,
JJ.
yeah, he's tidy.
He's going to... hopefully QPR will hang on to him this January, but I think he's inevitably going to move at the end of the season. He's a hell of a player.
Brentford have a lot of good players as well.
Yeah,
Brentford. Ollie
do.
Watkins.
They don't really.
Yeah,
who was that 10 in the middle of the pitch? Who kept doing all the tricks?
They've got a really good management.
They've got
team,
Ollie
but-
Watkins and they've got that winger Benaruma or something. I can't really say his name. Yeah, they've got some good players.
Yeah, plenty of answers. Our That's all for this week. You can contact me on Twitter if you like before next week's episode. It's at Tom with an H Gibbs. Also, send us an email. Why not? Get 2020 off to a flying start with the method of communication they're calling a good one. afcpodcast@telegraph.co.uk is the right address, and we'll read out the very best of what you send us. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Look for Audio Football Club wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks, as ever, to Joel Grove on the buttons and to you for your company. I'll talk to you again soon.